So I am fourth or third generation Singaporean, depending on which side of my family I want to trace my ancestry from. Most of my ancestors came to the shores of Malaya and Myanmar prior to arriving in Singapore. Many of them came from Tamil Nadu, but they were speaking in the Telugu language as well as Tamil. They belonged to a diaspora which had settled in Tamil Nadu some 500 years ago. This kind of makes them a diaspora of a diaspora. So most of my ancestors came to Singapore as tradesmen. Some of them were engaged in the selling of jewelry. My paternal grandfather, Varadan, for instance, was a trader in bangles, and my maternal grandfather was engaged in provision of labor services. My family came to Southeast Asia less than 100 years ago, but Tamils have been a part of Southeast Asian demographic landscapes for well over 2,000 years ago. The earliest textual reference to Tamils in Southeast Asia that we have belongs to a text called the Pattinapali. In this text, there is a reference to the arrival of goods from Southeast Asia in the Tamil port city of Kaveri Pumpattinam. The text reads, "Irathu unavum Karagathu aakamum," the food of Sri Lanka and the goods of Karagam, which is a locality in northern Malaya, which we now call Kedah. Kedah, of course, has greater significance to Tamil speakers through history. It was from here where the Choras of the 11th century ruled the Straits of Malacca for nearly a century. Tamils have been coming to Southeast Asia not just as traders, but also proselytizers of various faiths like Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Buddhism, and much later Islam as well. We also have a number of Southeast Asian rulers who were married to Tamil princesses, such as was the case with the third ruler of the Kingdom of Temasek, as we learn from the Malay annals. Southeast Asian rulers were also wedded to Tamil brides. Such was the case with the 11th century Burmese king Chianzita, who received a bride from the Chora court. In Singapore's case, the 14th century ruler Vikramavira was also married to a Tamil princess by name of Neela, also called Talaipuchudi, perhaps because she was particularly fond of wearing flowers. So Tamils are often spoken of as immigrants to Southeast Asia. This is true for the majority of the population that lives here today, but one must be conscious of the fact that Tamils have been a part of Southeast Asian landscapes for more than 2,000 years. So we're not really outsiders, we're really insiders in the demographic formation of Southeast Asia. So this story is particularly poignant in light of the fact that there are movements calling for the preservation of Tamil culture, but when we look back in the past, we realize that the loss of language, the erosion of culture are rather misleading terms. We need to speak of them as evolution rather than erosion. So revisiting the Tamil trajectory in Southeast Asia is particularly important in light of Singapore's bicentennial. Our legacy in Singapore is not 200 years old. It dates back far older. It is over 2,000 years old. The Tamils saw Southeast Asia as part of their own landscape, and this is apparent from a literary text, a 5th century epic called the Manimegalai, where part of the story is set in Javakam, or what is identified with Java today. This shows us that the Tamils considered Southeast Asia not to be some sort of foreign country, but an integral part of their literary landscape. And Tamils have been moving and settling and intermarrying with Southeast Asian peoples for well over 2,000 years now. So this project is important in reminding us of our long-rooted identity in Southeast Asia. So looking back at colonial records of Tamil experiences in Singapore, it seems to be predominantly a story of laborers, convicts, and the mercantile element is often left out of this, but this in fact in the long run of history is the single most important Tamil contribution to Southeast Asia. In fact, in some of the earliest epigraphic documents we have in Southeast Asia are in Tamil and relate to the presence of traders and craftspeople like goldsmiths in particular in Southeast Asia. So one of the earliest Tamil documents we have in Southeast Asia is a touchstone belonging to a goldsmith reading Perumpattan Kal. So that translates to the stone of the great goldsmith. Another early inscription testifying to the Tamil presence in Southeast Asia is a temple tank inscription from Takwapa from southern Thailand. This inscription tells us that the tank built by Tamil merchants was named after the reigning Pallava king Nandivarman III. The tank was called Avani Naranam after one of the epithets of this Pallava king. I keep in touch with my Tamil identity primarily through the language. I am a keen reader of Tamil literature, in particular pre-modern Tamil literature, be it the Sangam poetry of 2000 years ago or the devotional poetry of the Alvars and the Nayanmars. One of them goes like this: Maasil Veenayum, Malai Madiyamum, வீசுத்தென்றலும் வீங்கில வேனிலும் மூசு வண்டரை பொய்கையும் போன்றதே ஈசன் எந்தை இணையடி நிழலே. These are the words of the 7th century Shaivite saint Appar. This song describes the beauty of the god Shiva by comparing a shadow to various beautiful elements, including a lotus pond and the sound of the lute.